Orion. So it is Sunday, August 23rd, 2020, and we're doing a special broadcast here. I'm speaking with director Taaqiy Grant, and we're talking about the film Hapi. You see me do some interviews with Professor Jane Small, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Dr. Wade Nobles, dealing with the film Hapi, the role of economics in the development of civilization. So we're here with our brother Taaqiy Grant to discuss this groundbreaking documentary. Hotep, brother, how you doing today?
Hotep to the family.
Absolutely.
Doing well. How's everyone?
Oh, we're doing well, man. It's just busy, brother. It's hectic. It's a hectic weekend, man. Yeah. So you talked to me about a year and a half ago about this project, and I've seen a lot of the film. There's a lot of buzz around it. So give people an overview of what this documentary is about.
Well, Hapi, just in a nutshell, is a snapshot of economic history from the dawn of civilization until today. And what that means is I like to look at it as 360 degrees. We start off today in the film talking about the current socioeconomic situation of our community, the political situations around the world, globalism versus nationalism, everything that's really, really hot topics, what goes on today. A lot of the rise in white nationalism, all that is addressed early in the film. Mm-hmm. Then we go back through time and touch on just how economics, politics, and culture feeds into who we are today as people in terms of just the foundation of civilization and the organization of government structures. So with that, we got to go to the earliest civilizations that we know, and ancient Kemet being one of them.
Right.
We spend a significant amount of time in the film about ancient Kemet and just their economics and their politics and their culture in terms of how they established their civilization. And with that, when you think of the term or the word Hapi, Hapi is the earliest known principle that the ancient Egyptians used to call a reference to Nile River. So one of the important things is we use the Nile as a backdrop to express economics through ecology, because the Africans that lived along the Nile used their ecology masterfully to build the world's first great mega economy. And that's something that has to be underscored, that the Africans were the first. So we were the first people to develop economics in any large scale. So once people understand and basically take away from that, people today, find your ecology of today, find your Hapi River of today, because they were using things that were very germane to them, in other words, to develop themselves. And not only from an economical standpoint, just from a way they communicated, their civilization, their culture, their customs, all came from various ways of their ecology. So we look at something like as far as just their the architecture of the Nile. The architecture of the Nile was built primarily a replication or mimicking nature. The temples, where the bundles of reeds or the papyrus stalks that they saw in the Nile, the pyramids, things like that, with the mountains, things like that. So the gateways and the temples were like, the mountain ranges. So all these different things were replications of nature, even down to the language. Everything you see in the language is a replication of something in nature. So understanding that, we want Africans of today to take from the legacy left behind by our ancestors and to develop themselves, to help themselves. But as we move through time, we go from Kemet, transition to the emergence of great West African civilizations and their economic foundation through the trans-Saharan trade, that they're able to garner a significant amount of wealth. Then we talk about the economic foundation of Western civilization through the transatlantic slave trade, the triangle slave trade, which is essentially and very important because of the development of Western civilization. We speak of reparations today, but we don't look at reparations from a more of a global perspective. It wasn't just the United States that benefited from slave labor. It was all the countries in Europe, primarily, that benefit from slave labor. So reparations need to be something that's addressed globally, not something that's addressed just within the United States. Great Britain, France, Italy, we go down a list of European countries, the Netherlands, that were all involved in the transatlantic slave trade, Portugal, Spain. So the list goes on and on and on. And it's very important to understand that has to be underscored. So as we come full circle again, it brings us back to where we are today, giving you solutions of things that can be implemented to improve our situation.
Well, and a lot of times I know people want to talk to solutions. I speak on panel discussions, and I speak at panel discussions, and people say, oh, well, we know the problems already. We want solutions. Most of our people now, let me preface this conversation. Now, you all watch the African History Network. We're on Sundays, 9 p.m., 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, and you hear me speak and you hear me say, I may say some things that are outside of the circumference of your own awareness. Just because you never heard them before, disagree with them, or don't like them does not mean that they are not true. It just means you have to do some research to understand what I'm talking about. So a lot of times with panel discussions and conferences and things like that, people say, well, we want the solutions. We already know what the problem is, right? But most of our people really don't know what the problem is because we don't understand history and we don't understand white supremacy and racism, what it is and how it works. Okay. And you have to understand history to understand this. And when you talk about the transatlantic slave trade, now this last Sunday, you had me to moderate a panel discussion with some of the people some of the scholars in the film. Professor James Small, one of my people. So say that again.
I want to say thank you for that also.
Oh, no problem, man.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for inviting me. Professor James Small, who's one of my teachers, he was on the panel. Infodushi, what's Infodushi's last name?
Jehuti Mezkai and Salim.
Yes. Okay. Jehuti. So I know that brother. He was in the first documentary you did called Nubia was the first documentary. The second one was the Tekken with Dr. Leonard Jeffries. He was in there, and you had Dr. Ashby on the panel, etc. When we deal with understanding this history, ancient Kemet, ancient Africa, the Nile Valley region of Africa is crucial, and it's important for us to understand that African people created economics. Economics deals basically with the flow of money, the flow of resources, things like this. We created those systems. That's not something foreign to us. We have amnesia. And that, who were the first entrepreneurs? These were African people.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? That's not something foreign to us. So when I hear some of our people say, well, Arabs and Chaldeans and Asians and our community owning businesses, they have a history of owning businesses. I'm like, what the hell you think our history is?
Right.
We created economics. We were the first entrepreneurs.
Right.
Okay. So what has been the response so far of this documentary? And people can go to hapifilm.com, HAPI, hapifilm.com for more information. I know you have a screening coming up also. What's been the response so far?
Yeah, the next screening is Saturday, August 29th.
Saturday, August 29th. Okay.
Yeah, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And like you said, you can go to www.hapifilm.com.
And it's a digital screening. People can tune in, virtual screening.
Yes.
People can turn
I like to call it the virtual movie theater.
Virtual movie theater, yeah. Go ahead.
So the response thus far has been overwhelming. And I think for the most part, people have garnered inspiration from the film and people have been touched.
Mm-hmm.
And, for me, it's almost reminiscent to my trips taken or the pilgrimages to the Nile. I've been actively involved with taking pilgrimages to people to the Nile for the past 20 years.
Right.
And one of the things that, for me, the most touching thing or the most universal statement is like, wow, this changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
Ancient Kemet has that effect and that ability because people see things that they never knew were true, that they were told lies about. And like you said, that being a cornerstone of foundation of civilization, and not just our civilization, but world civilization, mm-hmm. people begin to have a different respect and outlook on things. So the Hapi film has had the same type of reaction from those who have seen it. Those who have seen it and witnessed it, the testimonials are tremendous. And we want to give a shout out to all those who supported it, all those who've waited a long time, because, one of the parts of a part of the process why it took so long to produce, and when they see it, they understand because a lot went into it. Whenever you have a project of this magnitude, financing is a huge, part of it. It's just what it is. We're talking economics. So with that, it took about 4 years to complete because we had to do it step by step, piece by piece. As money would come in, we move on and on and on. And one of the things, the mechanisms we used to garner support and raise funds was we had, I like to say, pre-screenings, and we showed bits and pieces of the film as we went along. So people were expecting the film years ago. People were reaching out to me, hey, when is it done? When is it finished? When is it finished? When is it finished? I'm like, not yet, not yet. I felt really badly about that. But the reality is that support that we was able to have throughout the years helped us get to this point to where we are today. People like yourself, other people who came along and who helped us out throughout the process, throughout the years. My partner, Tutti Films, Robert Gay and I, Felicia Harden, all those, we came on, put together and worked really hard to make it happen. So again, the response has been very positive. People are already asking for a part 2. It's like, still, and it's funny because in the sense the real work has just begun.
Right.
We worked 4 years doing this, but the real work has just begun. This here, really getting the word out is the real challenging part.
Well, and not only that, I appreciate people's enthusiasm one to part 2, but it's like, wait a second, we got to implement what's talked about in part 1.
Yeah.
It's like
that's the critical part. Let's implement what's in part 1. So
yeah.
with that being said, we are actively involved in the Hapi movement. I'm glad you brought that up because one of the things is before we even broke ground, if you will, after making Nubian and Tekken, I want to do something that had a more lasting effect. So we always say Hapi is more than just a film; it's a movement, and that movement is referred to or called the Hapi movement. And the Hapi movement addresses the things in the film in terms of implementation of the solutions. So we tell everyone, be a part of the Hapi movement. Come, go to the website, sign up for the newsletter, see what our latest updates. We just had something last week. We had the community, first day of Community Empowerment Day. We put together the economics and the politics. We had very key politicians work together with charitable organizations that do the groundwork, in the streets, whether stopping gun violence, developing sisters, prison reform, homeless outreach. All these different organizations were there, and they were honored. It was a co-sponsored event through the African Portrait Theater, one of the cultural centers that was very key and instrumental in my development. That's actually where I met Dr. Linda Jeffries at, and the founder of that was a mentor of mine. He's an ancestor now, and his son and I, we grew up together. And we had this event with Hapi Films at the African Portrait Theater, and from there, we honored the politicians that are doing the work in the community, those who are actively involved in economic development, who have economic programs, and who've passed legislation and bills in the New York State Senate to improve the economic conditions in our community. So we wanted to really be more about what I guess how you could say, kind of put our money where our mouth is, and show people that the Hapi is more than just a film; it's really a movement.
Okay, so people can go to hapifilm.com for more information dealing with the movement, dealing with the screening coming up August 29th. That's a Saturday?
Yes, sir. Saturday, 7 p.m. Eastern.
Okay, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
And with that, I'm sorry, Mike, just real quick. Yeah. And with that also, we'll have another panel discussion, and this panel discussion is exclusive to those ticket holders. And like it's a private discussion that we have with everyone who has tickets, and the key cast members that were in the film will be a part of this new panel. Every time we do it, we have a different panel because we have like almost 20-something people in the film. So we don't have everyone at once. We bring in certain people and we have them on the panel. So yeah, the panel for the 29th is to be determined, but it will be, no matter who it is, it's going to be a dynamic panel.
Okay. And I know, just so people know, you were trying to get me in the film, but we could never connect. A couple of times I was in New York and we were trying to connect to film our portion. We weren't able to do that. So you brought me on the team to help promote the film. Okay, so the film features Professor Jane Small, Dr. Linda Jeffries, Dr. Julian Malveaux. You have people like Dr. Ashby, Dr. Wade Nobles. So it's a number of noted scholars, historians in this documentary. So when let me ask you this question. Can you elaborate on Dr. Linda Jeffries' systems analysis and its role when it comes to Hapi? Dr. J and Professor Jane Small, when they teach, they talk about a systems analysis, and they also talk about the pyramid principle as well.
Right.
Can you talk about that?
So, I can't really give this any justice, but I'm gonna give it a good attempt. Mm-hmm. So what Dr. Jeffries does is he puts together pyramid analysis to analyze civilization. And when we look at world civilizations, you have three major components: economics being your productive, creative capability, and politics being your management capability. And to manage both economics and politics, you need culture, which are your deep values.
Exactly.
So when we look at economics, politics, and culture, and we analyze situations of the world, we can determine where the economics are, where their politics are, where their deep culture is. So we look at something like our current economic, socioeconomic situation. Mm-hmm. We know we have the economics as Black Americans, right? We know we have the $1.3 trillion spending power. We know we have economics. We know from, without really uncertain terms, we have the political might to some degree, but we don't have the cultural imperative to manage both. And that's what we're losing. You know, most cultures in the world, they have an active nationalism, whether it's the Chinese, whether it's the Americans, the Indians. They see the nationalism as their foundation in terms of their deep value in their cultures, and which manages both their economics and their politics, and which keeps them progressive. So we need to adopt an attitude or the Pan-Africanist mantra in terms of an identity to address our culture and our economics, which will then address some of the over rabid consumerism that we have in our community. We'll be able to manage our economics more effectively. Not only that, we would understand the importance of spending money within our community to have the dollars recycle more than 6 hours before it leaves our community. All this is addressed in deep values. So the cultural imperative is what we are missing. And that's where film Hapi, to tie it into your question, the film Hapi comes in very importantly, because Hapi addresses the cultural imperative. It takes you back to who you were before you were introduced to this system. It addresses who we were throughout Africa and how we saw the world and how we saw economics and how our culture dictated our economics and our politics. Even before we made, it was funny because some of the things that making the film we just kind of stumbled across. People like, we talk about, I like to call the second cast. We have the cast members like the Dr. Jeffries and Professor Smalls, people like that.
Right. But
they're historical people that are very prevalent in the film. I like to consider cast members the ancestors we speak of. So people like Harkuf, people like Slavik Nak. These are individuals who were not only economists in their time, they were also governors. So here you go, essentially where you have economics and politics playing a role in ancient time. If we know from their culture was Nile Valley civilization, which again, influenced both their economics and their politics, and this is why they were so successful. So using that model, which is so important, we have to again adopt that and apply it to who we are today. And that's what Hapi teaches.
Okay, excellent. Once again, people can go to the website hapifilm.com, Hapi, hapifilm.com. Hapi is one of the original names of the Nile River. Okay, so that's what that's in reference to. One of the things you talk about in the film, you mentioned reparations earlier, because the film ties into reparations, correct?
Yes.
So talk about how the film ties into reparations.
Well, you know, getting back to people like Dr. Leonard Jeffries and Professor James Small, when we talk about so as the film transitions from East Africa to West Africa, and during that process shows the cultural confluence of the two, of African civilizations through language, culture, and art. We use references of the Wolof and the Medo Neter being one and the same, the Yoruba and Medo Neter being one and the same, all these different.
The Wolof from Senegal, referring to the Wolof from Senegal, the high culture, and because they're Africans are migrating from the Nile Valley region into Central Africa into West.
So we talk about that often, but we wanted to do it in a way that it was visually aesthetic to people.
Okay.
So we brought that combination in. But once we get to West Africa, and we get into Ghana, we go to the Elmina slave fort. So from this point, we're talking about the development of the economics, politics, and culture of Western civilization, and the political system that was put in place to manage the economics of the triangle slave trade, which was the joint stock companies, right? Like the Dutch West Indies Company.
Right.
And the East West Indian Company. Right. The formation of these stock companies. Right. Which, you got ships fitted in Europe, and then you had the ship, they were insurance was insurance was placed on them, things like that. So
Lloyd's
there was Lloyd's of London, right. There was a conglomerate,
right,
international conglomerate in terms of coming together, European nations forming an alliance to manage this, and they put together mechanisms in terms of political and economic mechanisms to be able to manage this system. And the goods that was produced in the Americas was then shipped and sold in Europe, things like that. The ships are outfitted in Europe. So there was this, again, this triangle slave trade that is not often referred to as such, but, you know, it's more so we hear the transatlantic slave trade. We wanted people to understand the triangle slave system that was put in place. So when we think again of reparations, to go back to your question, again, reparations has to be looked at as more globally. You know, all those who are involved, particularly the Dutch, you know, and the Dutch really aren't mentioned that much in terms of the development of the slave system. But they were some of the earliest ones, as well as the Portuguese. When you think of Portugal today, you don't really see them as slave traders, but these are the people you really need to.
They were the first ones involved.
Right. You need to identify them as being like the founders of that. So we talk about the
41, and they dominated for the first 200 years.
Right. So
Portugal.
So you look at something like the Netherlands, and you see where the Netherlands has garnered its wealth from. You know, you understand that, you know, it was through that process. So when we think of reparations, we think of the countries that benefited from it. And again, I want Americans to understand, especially particularly Africans in America, to understand that the call for reparations is something that it should be global, not something that is exclusive to the United States, because the United States are kind of like Johnny come lately. You know, the other countries in Europe, they were doing it for several hundreds of years before the Caucasians in America started to really get into
the English colonies.
Right.
Yeah, they had the English were involved in it in England, but when they set up the English colonies, it's going to evolve, because in 1619 we just commemorated the 401st anniversary of August 20, 1619. Those 29 Africans on the White Lion English pirate ship, but when they come into Jamestown, Virginia, and in our exchange for food and water and supplies, codified slave laws don't exist in any of the 13 colonies. So it's going to evolve. The first English colony to have codified slave laws would be Massachusetts in 1641. They come to Virginia in about 1660, and they come to different English colonies here in this land at different times. Okay, so it's going to be a system that's going to evolve, and then there is an erosion of the freedoms that those free African people had in those English colonies as well.
Right. So I just want to add something to that really quickly. I'm sorry. So we're going to do a program on our Happy Talks coming up. We're looking to get Dr. Julia Malveaux and Dr. Patricia Newton, who are very actively involved in reparations.
Yeah, and I interviewed Dr. Julia Malveaux for this as well. Yeah,
and when you think of Dr. Patricia Newton, her work, post-traumatic slave syndrome.
Right.
And they're dealing with that, and Malveaux dealing with the economic piece. You know, putting them together, talking about reparations is going to be a powerful topic. So if anyone just, you know, do not subscribe to the channel, please come subscribe to the Happy Film YouTube and Facebook channels to be a part of those discussions.
So is it Happy Film on YouTube? What's
Happy Film across the board: YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Okay. 2 words: Happy Film.
Okay, excellent. Okay, for those just tuning in, we're speaking with director Taaqiy Grant, director of the new film Hapi, the role of economics in the development of civilization. And you see me interview some of the scholars who are in the film, like Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Professor James Small, Dr. Julia Malveaux, Dr. Wade Nobles, just to name a few. So we're talking about the film, and there's a screening coming up August 29th, Saturday, 2020, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Visit hapifilm.com to get tickets and get more information. It's a virtual movie theater, so you can watch from around the world. When I interviewed Dr. Wade Nobles, who is a psychologist, African-centered psychologist, we talked a little bit about reparations, okay? And everybody, if you missed that, you follow us here on the African History Network, our Facebook fan page. Click on notifications so you know when we go live. Click on videos. You can go back and watch that interview. Also, those watching on YouTube, follow us on our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep. Turn on notifications so you know when we go live, and we have the interview I did with Dr. Wade Nobles there. One of the things I talked about is when we look at this concept of reparations, and unfortunately, a lot of these arguments for reparations are not legal arguments, which is part of the problem, specifically dealing here with the U.S. That's a whole nother conversation. But when we talk about reparations, the root word is repair. And that deals with repairing the damage that was done. We talk specifically about repairing the damage that was done, the damage of slavery, the enslavement of African people, and then subsequently Jim Crow segregation, redlining, what comes after slavery, right? But to repair means to make whole again, to put you back together, to return you to a state before the damage was done. So when we talk about reparations, reparations is more than a check, because to really understand the damage that was done and how to repair it, we have to look at who African people were before we were enslaved, what we had. We had our history, our culture, our name, our spiritual systems, our cosmology. We had land. We had our family ties. We had an identity. We had a nationality, etc. And to a large extent, we had our sanity. Okay. So when we look at, I'm not saying you're saying that it's just a check, but what I'm saying is that when we look at repairing the damage that was done, first, you got to assess who African people were before the damage was done. We weren't Negroes. You see what I'm saying? So cash payments can be part of a comprehensive reparations package. I've said before, I told this to Dr. Wade knows. I said this before, I say it again. Okay. So each year we go to conferences and we talk about how African Americans spend 97% of our dollars with people that don't look like us, right? So if we all got $1 million a day, white people will have it all back this time next week. And you would not have repaired the damage.
Right.
What you would have done is stimulated their economy.
Right.
I'm not against cash payments being part of an overall comprehensive reparations package. Ain't no in the hell reparations should be 100% money, because white people are going to get it all right back. Okay. Okay. We can't operate under this illusion that all of a sudden the spending pattern is going to change. If we get some money, if anything, it's going to get worse. Okay.
No, it's funny when I think about that, and I think this came up when we had the panel discussion.
Yeah.
You know, I look at something like this, like that Dave Chappelle show skit where they got the reparations and people turned around and started spending money and buying trucks and cigarettes and things like that. Mm-hmm. And the money was turned around, like you said, before they got it in their pockets. It stimulated the economy. And we said the importance of something like that really goes back to the deep values.
Exactly, the foundation. It goes values, back to the foundation. Your VIP. Right.
Yes. And that's what we need before anything, because if we don't have that, we're going to be unsuccessful. Mm-hmm. We get all the money in the world. Like, money's not a problem for us. You know, money's not a problem for us. The management of the money is a problem of it, because we don't necessarily have the deep values to manage the money, and that's what we're lacking. So the history is imperative. People like yourself, the African History Network program, I consider you really you're like the top in terms of just the information, and you're always on top of current events.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Anything that goes on in the community or around the world, not just in the community, but globally, your topics expands the gamut of just total global communication, and we got to applaud you for that, for your efforts and updating and keeping the community abreast of what's going on.
Thank you.
And so platforms like yourself, films like Hapi and others, Hidden Colors, are really essential, because they really talk to the people or the family about the importance of history. You know, and I'll give you a quick story. Okay. I was traveling the other day, and these two elder sisters were talking, and they were giving an analogy of President Trump. And they were calling him Pharaoh. They were using an analogy referring to him as Pharaoh. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing because, with that, they have already demonized themselves. They demonized them culture, because they were looking at him negatively, and they were saying, yeah, like Pharaoh in the Bible did blah, 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 and all this other stuff.
They're coming from a Europeanized Christian mindset.
Right. And with that, they've lost their power, because Trump and others are garnering power from what they were referred to as Pharaoh. They look to the now as being a source of history and a source of information, and they always have. The Greeks and the Romans are Johnny come latelys, but all Europeans have. The Asians had. They all did. They look to the now as that source, as that foundational piece. And It's sad that Africans have been bamboozled, to use Malcolm X's word, bamboozled to the point where we see our cultures being demonized. Mm-hmm. And to compare Trump to Pharaoh, I was like, damn. I was like, you have no understanding of history and culture to make that comparison. Like, you're totally just off kilter, but that's what we are.
Right.
And we need to change that. And we wanted to show people again the images, and this is where the visual cinematography and the aesthetics of the film come in so importantly, because you need to understand, and first and foremost, that the Africans along the Nile who built the pyramids and other sacred structures were Black.
Right.
And you know, we hope that message gets home, and you know, people who were not necessarily conscious or awakened see a film like Hapi, and you know, and now want to ask further questions.
Exactly. Well, you know, many of our people, and it's not just older people, it's probably more prevalent with previous generations, but many of them have been taught that Africa, specifically ancient Egypt, was evil.
Evil, yeah.
And they've been taught that.
That's the greatest lie ever told.
Yeah, they've been taught that Pharaoh, well, in the Helios Biblos, or Holy Bible, they use the term Pharaoh as if it were the name of a person as opposed to a title. One. And there have been many pharaohs. So which one are you referring to? So that's problematic right there. But they've been taught to see the pharaoh as being evil. Therefore, ancient Egypt is evil. Therefore, I don't want to deal with that Black stuff.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So this is what we're dealing with.
Yo, the programming is deep. It is. Even if you get into just the essence of what the word pharaoh represents. Mm-hmm. The word pharaoh was a word that was foreign to ancient Egypt and or to Kemet. You know, they did not refer to the leaders or the rulers of ancient Kemet as pharaohs. The Syrians did. They referred to the people and the rulers as the Per'ah, or the Great House.
Right.
You know, we had many terms. Mm-hmm. Right. Per'ah. So that wasn't something that was used in ancient Kemet. You know, the word or term for the ruler was Nasut Biti, which is rule of upper and lower Kemet. You know, and there's so many different references in terms of just the spirituality and the cultural imperative that comes along with that. Not only that, you also have the Sa'ara, which is the son of Ra. So the understanding of just the ruler being connected to the divine was introduced in Africa through the Nile Valley, with the Nasut Beti being the manifestation of the Son of God on earth. So, you know, all the things that they see as being holy, or the things they see as being divine, were stolen from ancient Kemet. You know, the sad part about it, they don't know it. The Europeans for years have used, you know, Kemet to empower themselves. We touched on that in the Tekken, the film The Tekken.
Yeah.
Look at a place like Washington, D.C., and you see how the Europeans in this country, and Tony Browder did an excellent job, obviously, with Egypt on the Potomac.
Right.
And the film Tekken was basically a rendition of that. But the importance of just understanding how the architectural design, the layout of D.C. was made a replication of ancient Kemet. And we touched on that also in Hapi, in terms of just the national park with the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Monument, the Mirrored Pool was a replication of the Karnak temple system that we have in ancient Egypt. And you see how these Europeans are borrowing and constantly using our knowledge to empower themselves. And we implore Black people to get into their own culture, to you know, invest in their own deep values to empower themselves.
Well, in the Tekken, and I'm going to ask you about this just a second. Everybody watching, be sure to share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Follow us on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. If you like this type of information, also you can donate to the African History Network. $ the AHN Show through Cash App. $ the AHN Show through Cash App, and through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show, paypal.me/the AHN Show. That helps support the African History Network, helps us to keep broadcasting our Sunday night show, etc. So in the Tekken, now I know Browder. Browder's a friend of mine. I've interviewed Browder a number of times. We've been on the panel discussion before. And Browder does the Egypt on the Potomac tour, where he deals with how the layout of Washington, D.C. is based upon ancient African principles, specifically coming out of the Nile Valley region of Africa. And in the documentary that you did, it was about 10 years ago now, wasn't it, like 2010?
Yeah, no, I think a little bit. Actually, I mean, 12 years ago now.
12 years ago. The documentary that you did, Tekken, that really brought that to life. But so a lot of people don't know the history of Washington, D.C., and how the layout of Washington, D.C. is a copy of the layout of ancient Kemet, of ancient Egypt. In Washington, D.C., in the film, you talk about a was it a waterfall or pool? It's in the shape of an ankh.
Yes, yes.
Talk about that for a minute.
So when you go to Meridian Hill Park, or
Is Rennie Hill?
Meridian Hill.
Meridian, that's right. Meridian Hill Park.
Meridian Hill Park, or what they affectionately today call Malcolm X Park. There's a wow. For those who want to see the tech in, is actually available on the Hapi Film website as well.
Okay, give people the website.
Hapi Film, HAPIFILM. Go to the merchandise page. You can see the Nubia's there, the untold story, and also the tech and uncovering the influence of ancient Egypt.
Right.
Both available. So when you go to Meridian Hill Park, it's interesting because not only they have this pool that's shaped in it's outlined in the shape of an ankh, but you also have tekken strategically placed throughout the park, which is really interesting. And when you look down at the pool, you look down on it, they also have lotus and papyrus, flowers planted alongside the outline of the ankh. You know what I mean? So it's actually shaped in the waterfall because it's actually downhill like this. And you have these plants, the lotus and papyrus plants. And we know in terms of lotus and papyrus, those are I guess you would say, the national plants of Egypt. The lotus symbolizes the south and the papyrus symbolizes the north. And together they were Simatawi, or the unification of the Nile Valley. So you have the ankh there and you have these plants there. And around the park, you have tekkens or tekkenu or obelisk all erected inside this park. It's amazing.
Right.
I tell you, it's one of the most amazing things. I didn't even know it existed till someone took me there, and then we did the film. I was like, wow, this is deep.
And people, if you go to a cemetery, you've seen the obelisks or the tekkens, the tekkenu for plural, tekken singular. This is an ancient African symbol coming out of ancient Kemet, and it's a symbol of resurrection coming from the story of Osar, Osset, and Heru. And you see those there in Washington, D.C. And one of the things that Browder does, and you talk about this in the film also, is you talk about the influence of Freemasonry.
Yes.
Freemasonry, going back to Freemasonry, the foundation coming out of ancient Kemet. Mason means the son of light. And it deals with the teachings in the Grand Lodges, what became known as like the Egyptian mystery system. So, I mean, it's a deep, deep history. And 50 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence were Freemasons, right? So we see this influence here in the U.S. coming straight from ancient Africa.
We were on 16th Street in D.C. and actually Infodeshi's is very prevalent in the film, and we were going through it, and I think it was the Shriners, their Masonic temple there,
right?
And they have from the east comes the light, and from the west comes the law, right there on the doorway. And it basically is telling you is where they get their information and their knowledge from. But they're ruling us with the knowledge that we supplied and we, provided.
Exactly.
It's such a phenomenal and deep part of history. And it's sad that Africans have not accepted who they are, because if they did and they wake up, they would understand that we are truly the civilizers.
Right.
We go on, further to discuss, other things, even in Hapi, where the One World Trade Center itself is designed like an obelisk. And that's in the film. The layout of not just the building itself, but the construction template or blueprint in terms of how they did the pools, where the towers stood, or what I like to refer to as libation pools. And you have this huge obelisk standing in the center. And they went on, even the architect that designed it said, I wanted to build this structure as an obelisk. So they're still constructing replicas of Karnak, because that site in Lower Manhattan was designed and laid out like the National Park in DC, and obviously as the Karnak temple system in Egypt.
Exactly. Okay. Now people can go to hapifilm.com. They can get tickets for the screening that's taking place August 29th, 2020, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But also, if people want to get the film on DVD, what should they do?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because for those who cannot attend the screening, I understand the time constraint. Sometimes just to be at a certain place at a certain time to watch something is very difficult. They can totally just bypass that. They can go right to the website. They can order a DVD, or they can go right to the website, and there's a link for they can purchase a digital copy right now, and they can start watching the film right now. And it's a digital link that brings you to Vimeo, and you can own your digital copy. You can download it, take it with you in your phone, any place you want to go, or you can watch as many times you want, whenever you want. You get that digital copy, or you can get the DVD, and it'll be shipped to you immediately.
Okay, excellent. All right, now also at the website, you have T-shirts.
Yes.
People can join the Hapi movement as well, all at hapifilm.com, and follow them on their social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Hapi Film, Hapi, Hapi Film. Okay.
So one of the T-shirts we have is like this right here, is representation of the principal Hapi.
Okay.
And talks about the role of economics in the development of civilization. For people to know that it's important to wear this symbolism because it reflects who we are as people, and it also connects us to our deep values. The Africans that lived along the Nile saw the Hapi as being a source of sustenance, and the annual flood that that occurred was the foundation and sense of their ecosystem that brought about the rich silk that came from Ethiopia through the Blue Nile, that produced that fertile soil, that produced crops after crops after crops after crops, that then they were able to trade and use to build their society.
Okay. Lastly, when I moderated the panel discussion last Sunday with some of the scholars from the film, somebody in the chat room asked a question. And when they do the panel discussion, you'll be able to ask questions in the chat room, just so people understand. Somebody asked a question about upcoming tours to Egypt through your tour company, through your so what do you have planned? Taaqiy Tours, do you have anything planned next year or anything like that?
So I'm planning to do a trip in February.
Okay. 2021.
2021.
Okay.
However, with the pandemic being an ongoing issue, it's really hard and difficult to plan a trip with a group trip.
Right.
Because group trips take a lot of planning, a lot of preparation, and they take notification time. So we were going to do, so February we're really essentially going to happen. We will be actively planning right now. So what I tell everyone is those who are interested in traveling to Kemet with us, they can just send me an email to Taaqiy Tours at AOL.com. That's AKHETTOURS, one word, at AOL.com. Again, that's AKHETTOURS at AOL.com, or go to Taaqiy Tours website, TaaqiYtours.com, www.TaaqiYtours.com, and they can communicate with us through that venue. So hopefully at some point in 2021, we're looking at going back to the Nile. It's been a few years for me now, since we were there producing or filming Hapi. I haven't been back since. So I'm eagerly awaiting a return because it's been some time for me, and I can't wait to get back. So we're definitely going to go back. It's just a question of just when, Americans can travel, because right now we're restricted basically from everywhere in the world.
Well, yeah, because this dumbass in office is just
it's sad right now. So right now we're in a holding pattern. Now I don't want to start planning a trip that we're going to have to postpone or cancel or anything like that. So as soon as we'll start to move in the other direction, maybe next spring be a good time. I don't like to do summer because the heat becomes a distraction.
Yeah.
Literally, you're dealing with like 110, 112 degrees midday in like July and August. So I really, really try to stay away from summer trips. So because of that, we've always done the Black History Month February trips. The weather's beautiful. It only tops about 85. People say, Taaqiy, I see you in pictures, you got a jacket on. I say, yeah, because at nighttime it gets a little cool. But, I tell people, say, well, how should I dress? Bring a light sweater or a sweater or a light jacket. and you'll be fine for the nighttime or early in the morning. But middays 80, 85, and we're comfortable. But so hopefully if we don't do February, late spring, maybe, if not late spring, we could look to the fall of 2021.
Okay. All right, brother. Well, look, man, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on and discuss the film Hapi. And we look forward to another screening of this film and panel discussion, etc. Okay.
Right. No, thank you. I just wanted to say one last thing real quick. So I just want to, give you a shout out, say a special Madase P to you. Many thanks, because throughout the years, and I just want the audience to know that, the brother Michael and Imhotep and I, we've been in touch with each other for like the past maybe 12 years or so. And he's been someone who's been always an active supporter. He used to reach out to me and one of the really the only people that would reach out to me directly. And I would ship him copies of Nubian and the Tech. Most people would just do their own thing. And I wasn't ever trying to stop bootleggers, but he would always say, "Hey, Taaqiy, send me, I need some more. I'm gonna send you a check. Send me about 10, 12 copies," and I would mail them to Detroit. So, this brother's a very upstanding brother, and someone who is about what he says. Definitely, he's a man of his word, and he's very honorable. So I appreciate you, man. Appreciate for being you and having me on the show.
Oh, no problem, man. We don't do this for the money, but it sure as hell takes money to do this, man. So
yes, sir.
Yes, sir. All right, brother. You take care, man. Have a good day. Okay.
You too. Peace.
All right, peace. All right, everybody. Hey, look, we have to get out of here. This is Michael Imhotep. Follow us on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network. Turn on notifications so you know when we go live. Follow me on my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. Turn on notifications so you know when we go live. You can donate to the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. And listen to the African History Network show and watch us live every Sunday, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We broadcast on 9:10 a.m. Superstation WFDF in Detroit. Also, the radio station is now on iHeartRadio as well. So download the iHeartRadio app to your smartphone. And also, we broadcast live on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, and my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep. We also have our broadcast in audio podcast format on 8 different audio podcast platforms. So if you go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, right on the homepage, click on Listen to Podcasts, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, click on Listen to Podcasts, and it takes you to our Blog Talk Radio page. And we upload our podcast there, but we're on iTunes, Acast, Stitcher, Castbox, and some other platforms also. So wherever you get your audio podcast from, search for The African History Network Show, The African History Network Show. So we have over 1,000 audio podcasts as well. Okay, look, hey, we have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. Remember, right knowledge corrects wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever.